Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking Philly Sports with Matty B program here on the Edge of Philly Sports with your boy Matty B. On this, it could be morning, it could be afternoon, it could be evening where you're watching me. This is a pre-recorded video. It's Thursday night where I am, but we're going to end up putting this thing out, I think, around Saturday morning. So good Saturday for you, and I hope you have a good weekend in advance. But normally I don't come on the air this week or during the weeks where the Eagles games fall on Monday night. But I figured, why not? The hell with it, man. I'm in charge around here. I'll do what I want. So I was able to throw together a show and get on the air. And more importantly, this is our Birds Breakdown with Kyle Quinn show. So I don't want to go like 3 weeks before I talk to Kyle again and have to break down the Buccaneers, the Commanders, and then look ahead at the Rams. We'll be talking forever. And I don't know if Kyle can maintain all those memories and thoughts from 2 weeks prior. So I made it easier on the young man by doing it here this week. So Kyle will be joining me here in about 2 minutes. But it is a busy, busy week here in the city of Philadelphia and the sports scene. The Eagles are off to a 3-0 start. And the Phillies, that's right, the Phillies have punched their ticket to a second consecutive postseason. They are the number 1 wild card or the overall number 4 seed in the National League. And they will be doing battle, I guess, 3 days from when you're listening to this on Tuesday against an unknown opponent who might be known by the time you're listening to this. So insert Chicago Cubs, Arizona Diamondbacks, Miami Marlins, or Cincinnati Reds were applicable. But that's going to be happening. But, of course, the Eagles coming off that Monday night game, 25-11 beatdown, or was it a beatdown over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? And now we're looking ahead at Sunday, 1 o'clock. One of only 3 1 o'clock games we have in the entire schedule against the Washington Commanders, kicking off the NFC East portion of our schedule. But before we get to Kyle and the Birds breakdown segment, I'd be remiss. I got to start off with what I start off with every week, and that is your day in Philadelphia sports history. And there's 2 things that I found on this day. Now, remember, even though this day is Thursday, it's really Saturday. So we're going to go ahead with September 30th as this day of Philadelphia sports history. 2 things. 1964 and 2007. I'll give you a hint. They both involve the Phillies. I'll give you a hint. They both involve making the playoffs or potentially not making the playoffs. For those of you who remember 1964, and no, I was not one of them. I was not around 1964, contrary to popular belief. I was not. But the Philadelphia Phillies, with 12 games remaining in the season, held a 6.5 game lead over the St. Louis Cardinals in the NL East. And guess what? Failed to clinch a playoff spot as they went down and they just flamed out 10-game losing streak to kind of wrap up the season. They did win the last 2 games of the season, but it was not enough as the Redbirds had overtaken them in one of, if not the greatest, flame out in Major League Baseball history, which brings me to 2007 on this date, September 30th. That is the date where the Phillies clinched the National League East over the New York Mets, who flamed out in an epic September collapse. Now, this was more of a, kind of a prolonged or methodical flame out. It occurred over the entire month of September. But Jimmy Rollins, who uttered those famous comments back in spring training that we are the team to beat in the NL East, well, those wishes came true and those thoughts came true as the Phillies on this day, September 30th, with the white towels waving at Citizen Bank Park, returned to the postseason for the first time in 13 years or 14 years. By beating the Washington Nationals and clinching the NL East. So both Phillies related and both playoff related. So that is your day or your moments in Philadelphia sports history on this day, September 30th. And that brings me, of course, to the Birds breakdown segment with Kyle Quinn. Let me get him out here. He's been waiting patiently and scene. There you go, Kyle. What is going on, man? Thanks for coming back on a Saturday. What's up, man?
No problem, Matt. I was surprised to hear you said you weren't around for the 1964 Phillies.
No, I was not there. No. No, I know it's a shocker to a lot of people, but no, I was not hanging out down the third base line. And I don't even know, was that Connie Mack Stadium back then? This predates the vet, so I know I was not there. So
about them Phillies, Matt.
Yeah. But it's interesting that those two moments happened on that same day in Phillies history. But Kyle, we're not here to talk about the Phillies, even though you're more than capable to talk about them. But we're of course here to talk about some Eagles football. Monday night, down there in hot, muggy, rainy Tampa, the Eagles 25-11 victors over the Buccaneers. a better effort, I guess, all around by the offense, and then an outstanding effort by the defense. Kyle, what was your take on Monday night's game?
Well, I mean, definitely trending in the right direction. It was, I would say, not a complete effort with, some of the mistakes they had, but their most complete effort of the season so far through 3 weeks. I thought the passing game definitely looked a little bit better with a conscious effort to move the ball downfield and get it to AJ Brown. Now Jalen had a couple mistakes, and I know the coaches and whatever chalked them up to miscommunication, stuff like that. Whatever the case, they were turning the ball over. Those are mistakes, but I think the offense definitely took a step in the right direction. The defense, you said it, was, I mean, just absolutely dominant, especially the two guys up front and some of the young guys stepping up on the back end, like Reed Blankenship and Sidney Brown making a really nice play. And then you can even throw the special teams in there with Britton Covey having a day for himself. So yeah, I think just a good all around effort for the Eagles, and I think they sort of exposed the Bucs for who they were, and it's starting to sort of come together a little bit. It feels like.
On the offensive side, Jalen Hurts was 23 for 37, 277 yards, a touchdown, and as you mentioned, the turnovers, the two interceptions. He was sacked once for 6 times, a QB rating of 62.5, and a rating of 71.6. Is this a better version of Jalen Hurts than you saw in week 1 and 2, Kyle, in your opinion?
I think it was, and it might not show in the numbers because, like you mentioned, I guess his quiz passer rating seems a little bit low, and because probably mostly due to the interception and the low completion percentage. But you did see him taking shots to AJ. You did see him throw. I mean, the touchdown pass to Alameda Zacchaeus was, without a doubt, I mean, it was one of the best plays I've ever seen Jalen Hurts make. So I thought you started to see him be a little bit more decisive with that kind of thing, and more willing to pull the trigger and take the shots downfield. So yeah, in that sense, I definitely think it was a better performance from Jalen through the first 3 weeks. Still not what you want it to be, I think, if you're looking at this team to make another deep run, but definitely a step forward.
Other offensive standouts on the day, you mentioned Zacchaeus. He only had the 2 receptions. He was only targeted 3 times, but as you mentioned, that beautiful was that about 34-yard touchdown pass that Jalen Hurts just kind of lifted that thing out and put it really where only he could get it. So you got to give him credit there. Dallas Goedert, 5 receptions on the day for 41 yards. Devontae Smith, 4 receptions for 28 yards. Kind of a silent night for Devontae. AJ Brown, 9 receptions for 131 yards. He was targeted 14 times, and his long was 28. Kyle, we spoke about this a little bit last week, and you mentioned one of the things that you were concerned about with the fallout of the dust up there on the sidelines between AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts was maybe a force-fed thing that AJ Brown, which would kind of take away from the other receivers. Devontae Smith with only 4 receptions. AJ Brown had a pretty big day. What do you make of that? As just the game plan, or is this something maybe what you were talking about?
Well, I would say my concern lied more with how AJ would react when, once again, it's not his day, because I think we can all accept, and they do all accept, maybe besides AJ Brown, which is my worry, that there are going to be those days where one of the guys goes a little bit silent. Goddard had that day earlier in the season. Brown had his day earlier in the season, and this one seemed to be Devontae's day earlier in the season. So it's not like it's a bad thing to see AJ Brown go off for 139 yards. I mean, the passing offense, like we said, looked a little bit better, and I think that's due in part to the great day that AJ Brown had. So I'm not saying that part is a bad thing. My concern lies more with what happens again when, inevitably it will not be AJ Brown's day, because I think that day will come again, and that's just a product of having so many mouths to feed on the offense.
Yeah, I agree with that, and it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts. The last offensive thing I want to talk about, DeAndre Swift, 16 more carries, 130 more yards. He had his long was 29 yards, and of course averaged about 8 yards a touch. Again, you mentioned this last week that you didn't think he was going to see the 28 type of touch burden. He didn't, but didn't really limit his effectiveness. I'm going to ask you this again. I asked it to you last week. I'm going to ask it to you again. Is DeAndre Swift the bell cow running back of this rushing attack?
I mean, it looks like they're relying on him as though he could be. Now, over the course of the season, I'm not sure if we're going to see that consistently. Teams are going to look to try and stop it and make Jalen Hurts beat them by throwing the football. So I think the numbers might end up sort of regressing to the mean, but there's no question about it. I mean, DeAndre Swift looks like the best running back to get the football behind this offensive line. That includes last year, a few years ago. I mean, Miles Sanders probably the best one out of those years, and I definitely think DeAndre Swift looks like a better, more decisive, quicker, shiftier running back than Miles Sanders. So, I mean, the rushing attack is really exciting. It's sort of what's helping the passing offense not really get off the ground this early in the season.
And then transitioning over to defense, which obviously was the story of the night. Just a dominating effort there by the defensive unit, all around by the Eagles, front, in the back, everywhere. Baker Mayfield was 15 for 25, 146 yards, a touchdown, interception. He was sacked twice for 13 yards. The Eagles, as a defense, forced two more turnovers on the day, bringing their total now, I think, up to 6 or 8, some ungodly number like that, on the season. Baker Mayfield fell back to earth. Would you not agree there, Kyle Quinn, on Monday night?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I sort of expected that to happen a little bit. We were the first defense I think that the Bucs faced that was really worth a damn. So I sort of expected Baker Mayfield to look a little bit more pedestrian, and he definitely did. I mean, the defensive line gave him fits. You're not really seeing it in sack numbers, and you might not see the sack numbers that you saw from last season, but they're getting pressure. They're harrying them. Jalen Carter Davis just an absolute force up the middle. And we'll see if Hassan Reddick can start getting it going. I know he just got his cast off today, so we'll see how that looks. But yeah, I mean, then you got to throw Josh Sweat in there too. They're all really getting after the quarterback in a big way. So that's been fun to see early on.
And this all equals up to a 3-0 start by our Philadelphia Eagles. Some housekeeping numbers to go over. The Eagles have now, they've scored 42 points through these 3 games. They're averaging 14 points in the first half and 14 points in the second half of balanced attack. They've allowed 8 sacks, Kyle Quinn, as an offensive line. This is not what you expected. I know some of these sacks might be Jalen Hurts wanting to run a little too early, but 8 sacks for 44 yards. Is there a concern there with the pass protection of Jalen Hurts this year for you?
No, I mean, not yet. I think there might be if, you start seeing some guys go down. I will say the one thing about the offensive line that does concern me and did concern me going into the season is that they're not as deep as they have been in years past. The guys are getting a little bit up there in age. I know Jason Kelsey doesn't miss games, but Lane's a guy that tends to get hurt. And then, on the other spots along the line, they're not as they're not as loaded as they have been. So, but no, I think offensive line is usually something in pass protection, especially that's going to end up getting better and better as the year goes on. I think this is a similar threat that fans have for the Eagles in early seasons in a lot of years, and it ends up working out. So I think the offensive line is going to be fun.
Yeah, I know we're not used to talking about offensive line and struggles when it comes to the Eagles, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. The Eagles did commit 2 turnovers. It's up to 4 now in the season. I'll live with that. The defense got to Baker Mayfield twice. They have now sacked the quarterback 6 times for 41 yards. Still waiting to see that kind of breakout. I know Hassan Reddick going into, I believe, week 3 or week 4 last year was at some pedestrian number, might have been 0 before he had that big breakout game against Carson Wentz and the Washington Commanders. But and that might be coming up too here on Sunday against the same opponent. But yeah, I mean, listen, I can live with these numbers, especially the point distribution. The team seems to be moving the ball effectively, or is starting to move the ball effectively. But there is one last point to this game, Kyle Quinn, that I want to make with you before you transition to the Commanders. The red zone effectiveness, not as stellar, nowhere near as stellar as it was last year at up to this point now. One of my keys to the game last week was to get the ball in that first possession and score a touchdown. They failed to do that. Matter of fact, I think they didn't score any points to the third time they touched the football on Monday night. So, again, is this a product of Brian Johnson kind of figuring himself out, or is this a product of the Jalen Hurts kind of struggles that he's having early on, or both?
Yeah, combination of both. And I think that right there is the main difference between what the offenses look like this year, at least by the numbers, than it did last year, because early in games we were cashing in on all those red zone opportunities, and you saw against the Bucs, we probably should have been up like 21-3 by the end of the first quarter. I think the 2022 Eagles offense probably would have, because they cashed in the red zone. So I think that's been the biggest difference in the offense from this year to last year. And I do think it's a byproduct of Brian Johnson just sort of figuring out the play calling in the red zone. It gets a little bit different. The field gets shorter. And of course, Jalen Hurts is going to have to work out those kinks along with him. So I hope, and I do believe that that's going to be something that they end up getting worked out. I mean, they just have too good of a run game, too good of an offensive line, and too good a talent on the outside with wide receivers for that to really keep up through the rest of the season.
So, Kyle, let's turn the page. We got the NFC East coming in on Sunday. It's the start of that portion of our schedule. The Washington Commanders will make their yearly visit to Lincoln Financial Field. And a 1 o'clock game, Kyle Quinn, the first of three 1 o'clock tilts. I've never seen anything like that before. I've never remember in all my years, Eagles only having such a low quality of or early Sunday games. I know it's been kind of tough here for the first 3 weeks, especially the mini bye already in week 2 to 3. It seems like we haven't really watched much Eagles football. And Sunday they're going to play at 1 o'clock. But going forward, Kyle, I don't think I asked you this. What's your impression of the lack of early games this year?
I mean, that's just sort of what happens when you're the team that went to the Super Bowl last season in the NFC, where Jalen Hurts, the guy runner up for the MVP, is the guy everybody wants to watch, the guy that's on the cover of Sports Illustrated, Time Magazine, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and to add to your point, this is the only 1 o'clock Eagles home game that we're going to have all season.
Right.
So the other two are on the road. It's a super funky schedule. It's been kind of annoying. I agree with you that it feels like it hasn't really picked up much momentum. But hopefully we can sort of get into a rhythm with some Sunday games. And I agree with you that mini bye sucked. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do during the bye week again of the season.
I agree. Okay, so for the Commanders on Sunday, they're going all white. They're wearing their Wentz whites on Sunday. So I would imagine the Eagles are probably going to turn around and do the midnight green and the white pants. They haven't announced it yet, but I'm going to go with that. The weather in Philadelphia, no rain, Kyle Quinn. Can you believe it? It's not going to rain on a weekend, and it's not going to rain during an Eagles game. Well, at least right now, it's not. Sunny and a high of 80 on Sunday. Should be actually a really nice day for football down there at the Link. As far as your injury report, right now, the designations, the team has not really, there's a few. Let's get to that here. Let me bring it up right now. There's the Commander's injury report right now. Chris Rodriguez is questionable. He's dealing with an illness. Logan Thomas, their tight end, is questionable with concussion protocol. So that could be probably a designation tomorrow. I believe they have to release that by the Friday when you're in concussion protocol. And Percy Butler in dealing with a just status is questionable. I don't really know what's wrong with him. As for the Eagles, injuries have been something that we've actually had to have deal with this year. Landon Dickerson went out of the game the other night. I know he's day to day, so nothing really there. But injury report wise, Kyle, does anything kind of stand out at you or grab you in this game?
Not really. It looks like the Eagles sort of had a long list on their injury report, but not really anything that looked like somebody was going to miss the game or miss time. They're both teams seem like they're a little bit nicked up, but nothing that's really going to affect the impact of the game.
No, it's not. And when we take a look at Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m. or Sunday at 4 p.m., Kyle Quinn, what do you think is going to transact down there at the Link? What do you think? How do you think things are going to kind of bounce out?
So I think it's a division game, and the Commanders were obviously one of the teams, the only team that beat us with Jalen Hurts last season. So you can't really just completely discount them. I do think the Eagles are a much, much better team, but it might be a little bit close, I think, just to start maybe through the first half. But then I think you're going to start to see the Eagles defense really take over this game and be off on Sam. Eagles are probably going to end up running away with it if they can play a clean game.
Yeah, I think that's probably the consensus around town right now, is that the Commanders are just really not. Come on, you got a quarterback who played in the ACC. Am I the only one who really just says that is such a red flag? It doesn't work. When was the other Mitch Trubisky lasted 3 years before he flamed out completely? It doesn't work. No quarterback comes out of the ACC. It doesn't happen, man.
Not a big thing. I'm not going to completely disagree with you there.
Yeah, it's just not what you call a football. It's not a quarterback factory. It's not.
Nope.
So, all right, Kyle, what are your 3 keys to Eagles victory?
Yeah, well, the first one, we kind of touched on all of these, but the Commanders' best unit on their team is probably their defensive line. So the Eagles are going to have to protect Jalen Hurts. They're going to have to do a better job in pass protection probably than they have all season. Especially in week 1, the Patriots are probably the second best defensive front that they'll face, considering the 4 guys that they have. So the Eagles are going to have to do a better job in protecting Jalen Hurts and giving him time to get the ball out. If he does, then I think the wide receivers are going to be able to eat up on these cornerbacks and Washington secondary. So they're going to have to protect Jalen Hurts. And then on the other side, I'm not sure if this is something that Sam Howell picked up from his predecessor in Washington, Carson Wentz, but he never likes to let a play die, and he loves taking sacks. I think he leads the league in sacks through the first 3 weeks. So that's an area I'm looking for the Eagles' defensive line to be able to exploit, really get pressure on Sam Howell, force him to make mistakes, force him to run around and just, screw up and be Sam Howell, be the ACC quarterback that you hate. So they're going to have to protect Hurts, get pressure on Sam Howell. And then the third thing, I'll throw you win the turnover battle, because what we saw in the game last year, what made the Eagles lose to the Washington Commanders, was some untimely turnovers that kept the Commanders in the game. And I think the Eagles would like to be able to pull ahead in this game and not really keep a bad team in it and make them believe that they can beat you. So the only way they can do that really is by screwing up, shooting themselves in the foot like we saw them do last season. So I want Jalen to protect the football. I want everybody to protect the football. And I want them to try and force Sam Howell to not protect.
Yeah, Sam Howell's been sacked an ungodly 19 times thus far through 3 games. That's amazing. It's off the chains. So that's literally half as much as the Eagles have given up. So I agree. On paper, this doesn't look anywhere near a game, but it's still Chase Young, Terry McLaurin, and Brian Robinson Jr. They got to be accounted for. I get it. It is what it is. But those 3 have to be accounted for. Just to name 3. But my Keys Eagle victory on Sunday. Tight ends. Let's get them involved. Dallas Goedert's got to get involved in the season here. He needs to come. We need to start to kind of getting that ball down that middle. It's really kind of criminal that he hasn't been involved as much in the offense as he has been. So I need to see Dallas Goedert to get more involved, open up the middle of the field, which would then open up the middle of the field potentially for the edges of the field for potential down the field shots. My second key, the Eagles' victory again, going on the Sam Howell train. Remind everybody he's from the ACC. Come on, this is not even. This shouldn't even be a competition or a battle or a conversation. Remind everybody that this guy's from the ACC. And my number one key to Eagles victory, and it was my number one key to Eagles victory last week. I'm going to go back to it. Jalen Hurts. I need to see continued progressions from Jalen Hurts, and we need to get quicker. We got to get back to where we need to be, because the first quarter of the season is coming to an end. And the second quarter is not looking as, I'll say, cream puffy, but it's looking a little bit harder. So we need to get these things ironed out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, well, definitely agree with you. Part of the scheduling. You got a bad team coming in, home game, so you better take care of business.
Does this have trap game written all over it, Kyle Quinn?
I mean, you could say that. I know the Eagles are more than a touchdown favorite, but it's a division game. Eagles are undefeated, and you never know. They're on a short week, so yeah, sure.
Okay, that was easy. Let's remind people at home before we talk predictions and scores. Me and you both had the Eagles last week, and once again, me and you come out on the winning side. I had the Eagles 28-17, and you had them 26-23. By virtue of my score, I'm going to go ahead with me as the overall winner. I was the closest one there. And your player of the game was Jalen Hurts, and my player of the game was also Jalen Hurts. But can we agree that he was not the player of the game on Monday night? Would you agree to that?
Yeah, I would say it was not Jalen Hurts. I might even have to give it up to 1 or 2 of the guys on the defense.
Yeah, I think so too. We're going to go ahead. So we both missed out on that one. So week 4, what is your prediction score against the Commanders, or
Kyle? So it might start off a little close. Maybe if the Eagles offense starts slow, makes a mistake. God forbid. I think it could start, even at the half, but I think the Eagles are pulling away. 8 to
28 to what?
13.
And your player of the game?
I mean, I might as well just keep the bit going and just go.
Come on.
Eventually, he's going to fall.
Well, he's bound to get it at least one of these weeks. All right, Jalen Hurts. My prediction is score. I don't think I kind of agree with. Maybe it might get up to a little bit of a slower start than many people are going to be comfortable with down there at Lincoln Financial Field. But I think this gets away from the Commanders sooner rather than later. I think the Eagles maybe kind of put a couple touchdowns on the board late in the first half, kind of get that 14-point lead going in the halftime. And then they just completely blow the doors off the Commanders in the second half. I got Eagles 35-21, big winners, and Devontae Smith is my player of the game.
Ooh, Devontae. You know what? It would make sense within the rotation of
That's it.
receivers are getting their targets. So I like that.
Absolutely. All right, Kyle. Question of the week time. Again, I lock myself, I hermetically seal myself into a room until I come up with the best question I can possibly give you. With the vibe around the city this week, Kyle Quinn, the Philadelphia Phillies are returning to the postseason for the second consecutive season. And we have a potential rendezvous with destiny with the World Series, and it's going to be 13 wins to a championship and all that. The question I have for you, if faced with a choice, faced with an option of only being able to watch the Eagles or a Phillies playoff game, you can only watch one of them, Kyle. What do you do?
Man, do I get the Eagles opponent?
No, straight up Eagles game. This is an Eagles game, a standard October Eagles game. I'm not going to give you an opponent.
Well, like I'm like picturing Dallas, and I don't know. I mean that's I hate you for that question.
Hey, I want to see where your loyalty lies, man.
You know, breakdowns.
I personally, that's a horrible question to ask. I mean, because it's one of those decisions where I guess just grab a baseball bat and bash the TV in. I don't know, but let's hope that never happens. That never ever has to be the option. I do remember back in I think it was '07. Matter of fact, the '07 date in history what I talked about when the Phillies beat the Nationals later that night. I don't know if you remember this, but that was the Winston Justice game against the Giants where he gave up like 17 sacks. That was that game that happened on that day as well. So it was a pretty busy day in 2007. I don't know if you remember the Winston Justice game. That was bad on all kinds of ends. Thank God we don't have offensive lines like that anymore.
Yep. It's been a while.
Yeah. It was bad. All right, Kyle. Before I let you go, where can people find you out there, man?
Yeah, just turn the radio dial to 94 WIP, and I'm on there every day producing for Hugh and Joe from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So all the time on 94 WIP.
Make sure you go out there and you look for Kyle. Give him a call too. He'll talk to you just because he has to. Not because he has to, because he really wants to. He's a man of the people. Kyle Quinn. We're back on Monday night, so I hope to see you here in a few days, and we're talking some breaking down some Eagles Commanders and talking some Eagles Rams. It's going to be interesting going out West Coast next week. So we talk again, Kyle. Have a good week. Have a good weekend, man.
Yep. Yeah, thanks, buddy. Hopefully, they're 4-0 by the time we reconvene.
Hopefully they are. All right, Kyle. Talk to you later.
See you. Thanks.
Right. Kyle Quinn. We're kind of in sync a lot lately, which is I don't know how to take that, man, because typically me and Kyle are like furthest from each other. But good to hear, good to know. Kyle Quinn joining me for the Birds breakdown with Kyle Quinn. Here, let me put up a little graphic. We spend a lot of money on this stuff. There you go. All right, let's transition now to the other two things we're going to talk about tonight before I wrap it up. The first thing is, of course, your fight in Philadelphia Phillies. The news of the week, of course, is the Phillies have transitioned or have clinched, goddamn, a playoff spot in 2023. They're going, and it is they're right now. Again, this is Thursday night. They're playing actually while I'm talking here, and they're going for their 90th win of the season. More than likely, they're going to finish over 90 wins with 4 games remaining to include the game that's happening tonight, and that is. Obviously, with 87 wins last year, that's what you wanted to see. I believe I was calling the Phillies at a 90-win clip. And you all know I host the Fight's Final, a Phillies post-game show here on EOP. And I was cornered last night on the final. I had the game. And I was asked, where do I think, or how do I think this is all going to end up? I don't think anybody's asked me that thus far this season. I don't think that question has ever been asked to me. What do I think? Do I think the Phillies are going to win the World Series? And I couldn't answer it. The best I could give the person who asked me was I think they got a shot. And I think that when you look at baseball playoffs, and I think more so than any other sport, with maybe the exception of the NFL, because the NFL is a one and done situation. But in the baseball playoffs, you're a bounce of the ball, you're a chalk line away from a world championship and utter defeat. And I think the Phillies have the potential to win a World Series. I do. They are the defending National League champions. Everyone seems to forget that too. This is theirs to lose, But with that comes some responsibility because they're no longer the hunters. They're the hunted now. Teams are gunning for them. And it's going to be very interesting how Rob Thompson gets the team ready. Is the pitching ready? Is Aaron Nola ready? I mean, is Kyle Schwarber ready? Is certain aspects that have driven me crazy about this team all season long, are they ready to kind of put those away and make a clean run at this thing starting on Tuesday? And that's the beautiful thing about playoff baseball. You don't know. And we're not going to know until we actually sit down and watch the games and they play the games. So I think they got a shot. It's super exciting. Great time of the year. I love it. We got Eagles, we got Phillies in October, and we got the Flyers in October as well. And that leads me to my final point here in a second. Let me wrap up the Phillies. Are they a better team than they were than last year? I don't know. That team came within two games of a world championship. We'll see. On paper, they are. They got better talent on paper, marginally. Is their pitching better? That's a great question. I don't know. Again, Aaron Nola. It all hinges on Aaron Nola for me. It all hinges on Kyle Schwarber for me. If those two individuals, and just them two, can put away their inconsistencies in 2023 and have a clean postseason, and we got a really good shot at winning this. But it all starts on Tuesday night. Again, I mentioned it's either going to be against the Arizona Diamondbacks, Chicago Cubs, Miami Marlins, or the Cincinnati Reds. And you may already know the opponent by now. Again, I'm taping this on Thursday. You're going to see this on Saturday. But boom, boom, boom. We're in. It's playoff time. Bring on the Phillies and bring on the World Series. Whew. All right. Before I go, let me kind of wrap some things up here on the Edge of Philly Sports. This is our schedule. We have you covered on all, like 5 for 5, 6 for 6, you name it. Take a look at this schedule and make sure you're checking out all of our great shows. Remember, Philly Sports Trips travel like the pros. Just because the Phillies or the Eagles are not on the road this week doesn't mean Philly Sports Trip stops. They got their own tailgate. Dolan's Bar and Grill on 24 East Sellers Ave in Ridley Park. Quizzo music, great times, memorabilia giveaways. You never know who's going to walk through the front door at Dolan's. And don't forget, give Sherry's tickets. You're looking for those playoff tickets. You don't need to look further than Sherry Tickets Town at www.sherrytickets.com. Family owned and operated since 1946. Save an additional 10% when you enter the promo code EOP10. And for workman's compensation, motor vehicle accidents, personal injury, and criminal law, Dave Cherry at 610-565-0300 is the man you want to call. And folks, thank you for joining me on a special edition of the Talking Philly Sports Matty B podcast or show. Sorry. Here on this Saturday. And don't forget, Monday night we'll be back at our regularly scheduled programming time at 8 p.m. We'll be breaking that. We'll be doing this day in Philly sports history. We'll be getting the Birds breakdown with Kyle Quinn and talking Eagles or talking Phillies and talking Flyers as well. Until we talk again, that is the flipping news. And baby, I am out of here.